Everyone. Today we're going to look at the recognition and registration of trade union. Now, a trade union can represent the employees. However, the trade union cannot act upon or act for the employee if they are not recognized and have not registered the trade union. Yeah. So these two requirements is very important for the trade union to start functioning as the defender for the members of the trade union. So this chapter we are going to look at the how recognition took place, and secondly, how recognition be a situation for recognition by the employer and the law. In order for us to investigate the registration and recognition processes, right? So we are going to look at four areas. The first one, we're going to look at the registration requirements, yeah, the requirements to register. And then second, we are going to look at the effects of failure or cancellation or deregistration of the trade union by the authorities. And the third one, the requirement for recognition. And lastly, we are going to look at the recognition in terms of disputes. Say, for example, the employer doesn't want to recognize the trade union being the representative of the employee. So we're going to look at the four elements one by one. As the introduction, we have looked at the previous chapters, which merely introduce the definition of employers, employees, and trade union. However, we are going to look at the Industrial Relation Act, which combines all three of them and to play part into a more complex relationship, which involve three of them, right? And with this interaction or complex exchange of transaction between these three, uh, there are what they call it rights and responsibilities that will arise, and we need to look at the contravention of any of these rights as to be unfair labor practices. Okay, as I said that this chapter we will be discussing about the trade union. And for the trade union, for any transaction to take place before any collective bargaining that is going to happen between the employer and employee, where I already mentioned that they will sit down and discuss and demand what they want from each other. The trade union must first be recognized by employers or by their unions. What do you mean by the unions? Obviously, the employees have their own unions, right? They can form their own union. However, at the same time, the employers, if they belong in one company where the employees is only one, so the employer themselves must recognize this trade union. So part 3 of Industrial Relation Act will actually explain the process. So in order for trade union to get their recognition, and also discuss the restriction in terms of the scope of representation of employees union, because not all trade union can represent every employees. There must be some unique or general requirement that they must meet in order for them to be recognized. Yeah. So before we go into detail, one of the main scope of representation that can be seen is by looking at the kinds of employee that a union can represent. So if they are to represent many or various employees, category of employees, say for example in this example I put as white or blue collar, then obviously the employer would not be able to recognize, because obviously this means that the trade union is having a conflict of interest, that they cannot represent two group of distinct group. However, IRA did not specify any condition, specific condition that the employee union, in order for them to meet, so that they can secure recognition. So there is no specific condition, because if there is a specific condition, then it might go against the federal constitution right to uh, exercise the freedom of choice, of the citizen. Secondly, nor does it prescribe the circumstances whereby the employers may revoke previous recognition made. So, if say for example the employers already make a recognition of a trade union, they the law, in the IRA did not specifically mention how this repercussion is to take place. So these two are actually up to the courts to decide. As I already mentioned earlier, so the fact that the employee can join the trade union is mainly to protect from actual or possible exploitation by employers, which in most cases employers will exploit, and to obtain improved terms and condition of employment. This is to gain some leverage in terms of the benefits by the employers towards their force. Yeah? So the working conditions, the benefits in terms of in terms of medical, in terms of various things that we already shown you earlier on. So, in what way that the trade union would be able to protect the employees from exploitation or promote their economic welfare? So, this is being done by two modes. Where the first one is grievance processing, meaning highlighting the problem that is being faced by the employees to the employer, and secondly is to go into an agreement, yeah, and the process is what we call collective bargaining. So you bargain first before you come up to a agreement, right? Just like you buying things, you negotiate of that particular product that you want to purchase, and obviously at the end of the day, if you decide to buy, then therefore you will enter into an agreement. So similar. So, in order for trade union to do that, IRA requires that union must be first recognized by the employer as being the necessary prerequisite to collective bargaining. However, we have a situation from time to time, industry court can actually enter into negotiation on behalf of the trade union, because it might go to the extent that the employers doesn't want to sit down with the trade union. So that is where the industrial court will come in. However, the Industrial Relation Act requires that the trade union be recognized by the employer. So recognition is very important. If there is no recognition, if the trade union conduct any act such for example strike, then it is considered as illegal, and it is considered as a crime. So obviously the economic impact that the employee can be terminated of their services, and obviously furthermore he or she can be jailed because it is against the provision. For example, we have the case of Ladang Sagaria Senamberhad and FC Nagaland. Yeah, this is 1995 award, where the union has actually not secured recognition from the employer in order for them to negotiate the rights. Yeah, and the employer should nevertheless be prepared to consider receiving representation from the union on behalf of its members about grievances that could be settled on an individual basis. So, in this particular situation, the recognition was not received. However, the court decided that in order for the grievances to be forwarded to the employer, you don't actually need the trade union to be recognized. In the process, say for example, in the process of the trade union trying their best to be the representative of their members, which is the employees, uh, some problems that came up, right? So, yeah, do you have to wait for the trade union to be established or recognized first in order for the trade union to take up that particular case to bring up to the employer? No, the court says that if they are in the process of recognition and there are problems that they need to sort it out with the employment employer, so they have the right to represent. On behalf of the employer, once recognition is given, then there is no alternative for the industrial court but to accept the recognition as valid unless it is being annulled. Yeah, being annulled meaning the employer doesn't want to have this trade union to represent the employees due to certain valid reasons. Yeah, they have to present it to the industrial court. So this can be found in the case of Sime Latex Products Limited and SLP Employees Union 1996 case. Earlier, I already mentioned about the scope of representation, right? In order for the trade union to be recognized. So, under Section 9 Industrial Relations Act, which stated that only trade union of a blue collar can apply for recognition for blue collar and could not represent other workers, which is categorized either as managerial, executive, security, or confidential, because it does not relate to that nature of the group, yeah, how the group is being identified. So we can see white collar and blue collar. So you must be able to represent your group rather than the bigger scope, because as I mentioned, it will be a conflict of interest. This is especially true when the employer has already recognized a specific trade union to be representing the specific group, and the trade union, after the recognition was given, must be able to represent and can only represent the group intended and not anyone else. So if there is an injustice that goes on within the place of employment, then the trade union cannot be busybody and try to defend somebody else if that somebody does not belong to their group members. Yeah? So obviously, if you are not a member of the trade union, so the trade union cannot come into the picture and try to defend because you are not a member. Okay, within the workforce, obviously some of the workforce would not want to, uh, you know, separate with the amount of money to pay the trade union every month from their salary, so they just want to be on their own. So if they decided to be on their own, and if injustice was caused towards these non-members, so the trade union cannot come in and represent those people. It's too bad that they are not the members of the trade union. So the question is, what happened to those managerial, executive, security, and confidential group? So these people, they actually have to form their own union, and they need to be recognized by the employer, and they have to put up a majority, yeah, in terms of their groups in order for the employer to be recognized. Because I think I forgot to mention this. In order for you to be represented, you must be able to prove to the employer, meaning the trade union, must be able to prove to the employer that they represent the majority of the workers in the factory or whatever employment place that they are trying to. Why? Obviously, this goes without saying, lah, right? Because it's only fair that all parties are to be represented by somebody that is going to take care of their own interests rather than the interests of others. Managerial, they have their own focus. The blue collar have their own focus that they want from the employer. You know, different people, different needs. Yeah, different group of people, different group needs that they have. So this is actually to establish the equal representation principle. In order for representation to take place, it must be a representation of equal members. So any kind of dispute with regards to the category of workmen that must be represented can be finally resolved by going to the Director General of Industrial Relations for his verification and determination. As simple as that. If there is any dispute, the case is to be presented to the Director General in order for him to decide. Obviously, the Director General is not the one that is going to be the decision maker, or obviously that will be given to his staff. So, the overall condition for recognition is these four, where number one is that the union must be registered, right? Obviously, we're registered with the industrial relation department, and then with the court actually, because the court will look and give a decision whether they want to they are able to be registered or not. Then secondly, the union must be competent to represent the employees, because we have some cases whereby the trade union is actually not competent to represent employees, because the people that is leading the trade union might be those who just want their names uh, um, to be called as representative, but they do not want to do the job. The job is very demanding, where they are to uh, make sure that they do their job, which is to represent the benefit or the rights of the employees. Third, for B, it might be to get some majority agreement of the employees, and that alone should represent the position that they are competent enough, because the employees are trusting the trade union to be their representative. C, the union must be representing groups to the same establishment, industry, trade, occupation of employees they're representing. Meaning the groups that the trade union is trying to represent, not only for the same group as I already mentioned earlier, blue collar for blue collar, the white collar for white collar. The establishment, meaning the industry, the establishment, the trade nature of the trade of that employer. Say, for example, you have what do you call it? Plantation. Yeah, we have several plantation, right? And we have rubber plantation. We have what do you call it? The what do you call it? Some other plantation that is doesn't come across my mind right now. The what they call it, palm tree industry, right? Then we have the machinery industry, the heavy machinery industry, the light machinery industry, and we have farmers, you know, different categories. You can imagine there are different groups of people in the same nature of work. And then the last one is the union must represent more than 50% of the employees that they are trying to represent, which is here is simple majority. It's not two-thirds. If it's two-thirds, then they should get better standing. Yeah? But the rule says that enough for them to get more than 50%. Even though it is not specifically identified in the Industrial Relations Act, but the act of fulfillment the above requirement actually means that the employer shall deem to have accepted and accorded recognition to the union, because the employer obviously they would be scared of the trade union and they try not to recognize. But if this case this situation goes to the industrial relation department, then the chances are that the trade union is to be accepted, yeah, because the industrial relation can come in and say you have to accept, because if only that they can come up with a good reason why they are not able to accept this trade union, then they have to present their case, and it will eventually be decided by the industrial relations. So within the recognition process, as long as the union is recognized by the employer, then it will remain continuous irrespective the reduction of members, meaning it goes below the 50%, and as long as it does not include the category mentioned earlier, meaning you don't include other groups, yeah, or other industries, or other groups within the company itself. Yeah, say for example, the trade union, they want to extend or to expand, so they would want to include managerial or executive or security members into their union. Cannot. Yeah? Or they want to merge into another union that represent other workers, say farmers and plantation. They just want to join together. Cannot. That is not allowed. This can be seen from the case of Korea Development Corporation and Construction Workers Union. Looking at the recognition process, the employer are not to investigate or interrogate employees. However, they should engage independent third party to help decide, claim, or just refuse recognition. Meaning, they are not to actively conduct investigation, because they have to appoint a third party, independent party, in order for that independent party to investigate. So why? Because if they were to do that, that is in the sense of the meddling with the trade union, and it is not allowed under the provision of the law. In this case, it was decided under the case of Lower Perak Motor Service and Transport Union. Yeah. The company, the trade union can argue, yeah, that the employer sort of like busybody. Yeah. So this is independent. They can do whatever they want as accorded with the by the federal constitution. Okay, this is the chart 4.0, the union recognition process. Yeah. If you look at the center, the employee union makes written claim for recognition. So they would send letter to the employer and asking for the employer to recognize them. So they will have to give all the conditions that is already mentioned earlier on. Yeah? More than 50%, that they are representing only a certain group, and that group is only within the industry that the company is conducting, and things like that, right? And obviously there will be three outcomes from the letter made by the employer, the trade union to the employer. The first one is the center one, where the employer ignores or reject the claim. So if this thing happen, then the union can complain to Director General Office, and for the Director General Office to take up this matter. And when you look down within the Director General, so it will issue either a membership verification or by virtue of secret ballot. So to decide whether this recognition is to be given or not. So it will be done by balloting. So if the recognition is awarded, then it goes back to the position that the trade union can start the collective bargaining process. If, say for example, recognition is being denied, so therefore the collective bargaining cannot be possible, then it is end like that, right? Because the employer reject, and then on top of that the director general of industry relation also reject. The second one is on the right. The employer asks director generals to validate their claim. Yeah. So there is no complaint that is being made. However, the employer can actually ask the director general to acknowledge whether the claim that is the trade union is making is considered as valid or not. Again, it will go down to the secret valid or verification process, and the outcome, it will be either recognized or rejected. Okay, so the first one is employer ignores, the employee, meaning the union, complain, but on the right side is the employer themselves. Next is on the left side, the employer exceed to claim, meaning they accept the representation or the trade union. So one is the once the recognition is accorded, meaning it is being filed, and obviously the collective bargaining process can start. So, what is the effect of recognition? In the case of Han Chiang School and National Union of Teachers in Independent School, 1988, where in this particular case, that once a union granted recognition, the industrial court shall acknowledge recognition and their local standby, meaning the legal position, standing. But in cases whereby there are no employees at all, then the union have no local standby. Meaning, if say for example somehow that the employer stop functioning, so obviously the trade union is no longer able to represent. So in this particular case involving a school, so even school are not closed and still in operation, but no employees either resign or contracts not renewed, then therefore the trade union could not function as the representation. Yeah, cannot represent the trade union when there is no members. In the case of Malayan banking Berhad and Association of Bank Officers, this is what the new National Union of Banking. No, this is different. This is between the bank and the officers. Yeah, so the bank and officer. Here, the industrial court declared that once recognition is given, the union employer cannot unilaterally revoke it. Meaning, it has to be both parties to say, okay, the contract is no longer tied up, or the recognition is no longer be established. Yeah, because the recognition is being made, and if they were to revoke, they have to get a bilateral, bilateral agreement rather than unilateral revocation. Okay, so so far that is the end of chapter 5. We will next look into the process. Yeah, just now is the process of establishment of trade union. Now is process of the bargaining. Yeah, and also the process whereby once the bargaining is already completed, then we have the agreement established between those the trade union and the employer.